All right, we're very fortunate today to have Jeanne Bernick. Jeanne matches the needs of large commercial producers with KCoe Isom's talent and tools, facilitating healthy, growing farm operations that are sustainable for generations to come. She offers a depth of industry insights and works alongside producers to zero in on a solution to keep ag operations thriving. Throughout her 20 years at Farm Journal Media, Jeanne developed long-standing relationships with large commercial ag producers and their families. Over her distinguished career, Jeanne became one of the top editors in ag media. An editor and award-winning writer, she grew top producer magazines in the leading industry brand. She travels nationally and internationally and wrote thousands of stories that capture the trials and triumphs of farmers that feed the world. She helps establish a national women's ag conference. She's created Top Producer Executive Network, the first national peer-to-peer network for ag producers, and she covers ag industry topics in rural America and places as far-flung as Africa. From childhood, Jeanne has walked in the shoes of ag producers. While her friends were playing during summer break, this is quite a story. She was rounding up cattle with her family on the ranch in southern Missouri. After college, Jeanne left the family farm for the big city. As fate would have it, she ended up returning to the farm across America, spending many hours in a truck, driving dirt roads, visiting, listening, learning all about who ag producers are, what they need. Their stories have shaped her, and they fuel her passion for connecting ag producers with the right business resources to sustain their long-term livelihood. Jeanne is the author of the new book, series Rising, How Women Are Leading Farm Business. Well, please welcome Jeanne Bernick.
Thank you so much, and that just proves that you can find anything on the internet, because I didn't know all that was out there about me. But at least it's the good stuff and not the bad stuff that's probably out there about me. Well, thank you so much, Norm. I'm really happy to be here, because for once I didn't have to travel miles and miles and miles to talk to producers. You all came to me, because I just live across the river in Walcott, Iowa. For those of you who don't know where Walcott, Iowa is, I bet you know where the world's largest truck stop exit is on I-80. See? Yeah. So when I say I'm from Walcott, people go, I say the world's largest truck stop? And they say, yeah, we've been there. So actually, it's a really fun place to stop if you've never been there before. And sadly or weirdly, or this may tell you something about my family, I can do a lot of my Christmas shopping at the world's largest truck shop. And they're very happy. So, and bear with me because I talk with my hands, so I don't know how this is going to go today, so just work with me here. Here's our discussion for today. We are going to really think forward, okay? We're going to take a look at what the future could look like for production agriculture. I'm going to introduce you to a topic called anticipatory thinking. How many of you have ever heard of anticipatory thinking? It's a new concept in business. It's actually built around the concept of having an anticipatory organization, or AO, and it's based on a book, and I'll share all this with you, but it's a new concept I want you to think about and try to use in your own businesses. And then I'm going to roll that into some of the traits of our best clients based on what we think is going to happen in the future. And then we're going to do some polling and see where we all stand in this room based on the things we talked about. Okay? Before that, in case you didn't already know everything about me, yes, I grew up on a farm, that's me. I grew up on a cattle ranch in southern Missouri, and so we backgrounded cattle for feedlots out of Kansas. And what I want you to know is something that I don't share with everybody, but I'm going to share with you today. We lost our farm in the 1980s during the economic crisis. And the reason I share that is that it shaped who I am today. Because the things I do for KCoe Isom and in my career are to further business education for producers. And the reason is that my father was an excellent herdsman. He could take a potload of cattle that were sick as dogs and turn them around, and we could make money off that. What he was not good at was managing risk, financial planning, and some of the tax work that got us in trouble. And so I share that because I think if my father had had access to the firm I work with today, to FBS Systems, to some of my colleagues that are in the room, I think we could still be farming. And so it's really important to me now, in my career, to make sure what happened to me and to our family doesn't happen to all of you. So I want to share that with you because it's very personal what I do. It also led me into journalism because I wanted to go as far away from farming as possible, right? So I was going to be a big city newspaper reporter. And lo and behold, I became the editor at Farm Journal and wrote about farmers. So life happens, right? It brings you in a circle. But it was a rewarding career. For 20 years, I was an editor there. And I got to travel all over the country. I sat down at so many kitchen tables and met so many amazing producers like yourselves. And it also led me around the world. I did a lot of work in Africa and Asia, or not Asia, I'm sorry, Europe. And so what was great about that is that I got to see agriculture from such a different perspective. And talk about humbling. You know, so many of us in agriculture can complain about the weather and the markets and the profits and the economic situation, which are all relevant, but until you've really spent some time in some areas like Africa, it can put some things into perspective. And then finally, you heard that I wrote a book. I have a real passion for women in agriculture. Steph, I'm so glad you're here with your dad. So, Steph, right? Yep. Because I'm raising 3 daughters. And I am seeing, not only in my life, but also in my professional career, so many amazing women coming into business and coming back to the farm. And there's a whole new kind of revolution of women who are bringing business and bringing different skill sets to agriculture. And so I want you to just know that about me because you're going to hear it a little bit through my presentation. And I also want to support any of you who are thinking, who have daughters, and who are thinking about bringing them back to the farming operations. There's a lot of really great benefit in how bringing different genders into your operation can make your business better. Okay, real quick. Some of you may not know who KCoe Isom is, but I bet you may have heard of what we were called formerly, which was Kennedy & Co. So we are an accounting firm that was formed back in the Dust Bowl by these 2 gentlemen, Jack Kennedy and Cotton Co. And they were based in Kansas, and they worked with farmers, and they did accounting for years. And then we merged with an accounting firm in California named Matson and Isom. And then someone had the brilliant idea to switch those letters together and create KCoe Isom. So that's our name, and that's where it comes from. But what's been cool about that is suddenly we are a 375-person firm with expertise up and down the value chain and across the country. So we do work from California to Maine, from Minnesota down to Louisiana, and it's really kind of broadened what we can do for our producers by having this larger bench behind us. The majority of our work is agriculture, and like I said, we're up and down the value chain. So not only do we work with producers on your farm, in your accounting, in your business, but we also work with your suppliers, we work with multinationals, we work with folks like Walmart. So it's been really helpful to be able to have those kind of relationships. We deal with ethanol plants, and excitingly, we deal with breweries. Breweries are one of our best clients, so that's been really fun to work with. We also realized that although accounting is what we've done in the past, and it's what has been our bread and butter, your farm is holistic, and so there's a lot of things that you need support and help with that fit in with accounting, and so we've really branched into a lot of non-traditional services that range from something we call Ag Knowledge, and that's where we have analysts that will come to your farm and sit in your combine with you and go line by line and minute by minute, looking at cost of production, fuel cost per acre, looking at your inputs, and really kind of helping you understand what your line items look like on your operation, up to something we call CFlexO, which is a really interesting service where we offer CFO level, so Chief Financial Officer level services on demand. So let's say you are working on a project on your operation, you're building a manure digester, or you're merging with a farm down the road, and you sort of need some advice or kind of financial services a little bit higher than what you have right now with your own accountant or your bookkeeper, you can hire one of our CFOs for like a 6-month period or on demand as needed. And that's been a really helpful service because then producers aren't having to go all in hiring a 6-figure CFO. We have conservation, we have farm program experts, we have a next-gen division because we're a tax firm and estate taxes are such a big part of what we do. We also are really big on succession planning and making sure that we are providing you the leadership and help you need there. And then lastly, some of our newest services are around sustainability. And I'll talk a little bit later about why that is, because it has to do with this anticipatory thinking and this future thinking. But we now are helping producers become verified as sustainable producers so that they can sign those contracts with Walmart. So we have the Walmart, the Costco's coming to us saying, we need a way to verify that the producers that we want to work with, producing cherries, producing whatever, chickpeas, whatever we need, are sustainable. And so we felt that that was something really important that we could help with as consultants because it fits really integrally with some of the data that comes out of the accounting side. So that's all about us. Now, I have a question. What if I told you today that you could predict the future with 90% certainty? Do you believe me? I'm going to show you how this can be done, but first I want you to hear from this gentleman.
How is your future based on the actions you take today? And I know there's a lot of people in this room that are busy. As a matter of fact, I think everybody in this room is busy. That's why there's a few people that aren't even in this room yet. Let me ask you a question. Were the top 5 executives of General Motors every single day for the 2 years before they went bankrupt, were they all really busy? What do you think? Yeah, didn't help them, it's not going to help you either. Think about that a second. Because there's something going on right now that you all know has never happened on this planet before. Notice I'm not standing on the X, I'm an out-of-the-box kind of guy. Alright, something's going on right now that's never happened before. The world's fastest supercomputer 2 years ago was disassembled 4 months ago because it was obsolete. Let that sink in. I've been working with IBM executives. One of them shared with me an interesting number. They had sliced and diced their revenue in kind of an interesting way, and they said that last year, over 40% of their revenue came from products and services that are actually impossible to do just a couple of years earlier. Okay, that's a lot. Why do you think that number will get bigger or smaller? What do you think? Bigger, of course. That's because, again, there's disruption going on. As a matter of fact, let me put it this way. Disruptor or disrupted, you do have a choice. But, because the disruptions that have hit us in the past were all there to see, but most of us weren't looking. Because change is coming to us so much from the outside in. You know, we read books on agility so we can move fast, we get around, but there's no way to anticipate them. But what if you could predict the future and be right? What if instead of having good hindsight, you actually had strategic foresight? You could actually see the future. And the answer is you can't. You can't see all of it, but you can see a lot.
So, you can see the future. You can have strategic foresight. And that's what I'm going to teach you today based on the principles of this gentleman. His name is Jeanne Bernick, and he wrote the book, Flash Foreward. How many of you have read this book? Oh, good. Okay, great. So I hadn't either. And so when I read it, it was really significant. And I'm a voracious reader. And so for me to say that means something. So I really recommend you get this book. And what he does is he talks about how so many things in business we can begin to predict. You know, in agriculture, we love to talk about the black swan. How many speeches have you heard on the black swans, right? And so this book and these principles kind of really help manage for that black swan. So I'm going to talk briefly about the principles. We're going to go into a few of those. And then, like I said, I highly recommend you get the book. So one of the first principles of Flash Foresight is that you begin to look at the hard trends in your industry. So a hard trend that we know very well, I didn't bring it up, is the iPhone. The next version of the iPhone, we know it's going to be faster. It's going to have some new item that we need. It's going to have a better camera. We know this because it's a hard trend. It's a trend that's happened with every iteration of the iPhone. We know that's happening based on technology and based on data. So that's a hard trend. So you take a hard trend and you begin to anticipate. So let me give you an example there. Apple company, back 15, 20 years ago, began to look at the hard trends that broadband data was becoming more available, that the internet was becoming more than Al Gore's big idea, that there are things that were happening with data and processing that were going to make you mobile. So what did Apple do? Apple created an entire suite around that hard trend. They had the iPod, they had the iPhone, they have the iPad, they have the iMac. All that is based around seeing this trend and capitalizing on it. Now, do you think Kodak had access to seeing that same trend? Of course it did. So Kodak could have seen the same trend with data and processing and bandwidth and the things that were happening, but Kodak didn't anticipate how that would impact photo imaging. And now today, Kodak is obsolete because we can do digital photography. So that's an example of taking a hard trend and anticipating toward it. Transform. So all of us are working on our businesses and in our businesses, and we should all be making small changes and little tweaks that make it better. But what Dan Burris talks about is making those changes in your business that are transformative, that are huge. Think about nanofusion. Think about the fact that we have oil rigs in the ocean now instead of on top of it. You've just got to think incredibly bigger and transformative, and that's what this book teaches you to do. These are my favorite principles. So take the biggest problem you're working on right now and skip it. Okay, so this means think about something you're dealing with on your farm business, and typically it has to do with labor or people, and you're just so fixated because we don't have the people to do that, or we don't have the money to do that, and that becomes the problem versus the actual problem, right? So let me give you an example. Eli Lilly, which is a huge pharmaceutical company, was dealing with the problem that they knew if they were going to grow in the world of pharmaceuticals, they had all these big molecular science questions that they needed to answer. Well, they knew that to answer these questions, they were going to have to hire like 1,000, they figured out it was 1,000 PhDs to work on all the problems that they had. Well, they didn't have the money for that, they couldn't find 1,000 PhDs, how are we going to do this? How are we going to become the company we want? This is our problem. Until they came up with an idea to skip it, and the way they skipped it was, they created a forum on the internet, an open R&D space. They said, here are our molecular problems. We're opening this up to every scientist in the world. Any of you scientists out there who can answer this, we will pay you. Boom. Over 1,000 PhDs looking every day to see what molecular science problems are on there that they can solve. And they didn't have to hire one. So they took a problem, they skipped the problem, and they came up with a different way around it. Go opposite. This is a fun one too. Think about everything that your competitors are doing and do the opposite. This is really unique. Perfect example of this is 15, 20 years ago. Do you remember when Barnes & Noble opened? That was really cool. You could go to a bookstore and you could order coffee, and it was pretty in there, and there was music, and there were couches you could sit on, and you could hang out. I mean, it was a novel concept, right? Well, Jeff Bezos, who's founded Amazon, look, he's the founder of Amazon, right, Millie? Yeah, he made a face. He's my tech expert.
The face of a terrible pun, the novel concept of Barnes & Noble.
Yeah, no kidding. Exactly. Yes. So he looked at this and said, well, I'm going to go opposite. I'm not even going to have a store. And there's going to be no couches unless you want to buy them from me on Amazon. So my point is, completely went the opposite way of what the bookstores were doing, and look where they are today. Redefine and reinvent. So this means not only do we need to be making changes in our business and thinking about that transformative, we need to constantly be redefining what we do. Perfect example of this is Lee Iacocca. In 1983, he came up with the idea that they were having consumers come to them and say, They wanted a family vehicle that was different than what their parents had, that was the station wagon. So Lee Iacocca came up with the idea of the minivan. He created an entire new category of automobile based on redefining a product that was sort of already there when you think about the station wagon. So that would be an example of redefine and reinvent. And then finally, all this leads to directing your future. So if you look differently at what your future is, you can begin to redirect how you're going and how you're going to approach it. And it really helps take some of the fear out of what we do in business every day. So keep those principles in mind. We're going to look at some hard trends in agriculture. Hard trend, aging farmers. Average age of the farmer is 58 and only getting older. That is a hard trend that no one can deny. So what does that mean? That means we're getting ready to have one of the biggest land transfers to a next generation in the history of agriculture that we have known. What does that also mean? We have a lot of young producers who may not be ready to take on these operations that are completely different than when their dads took them on from their grandparents. It also means that we have a lot of producers who are looking for that next successor and may not have that option because the skill sets are different than what they were in the past. So there's a whole realm of things that we can address based on this one hard trend that farmers are aging. Hard trend, increasing population. So the blue line is the GDP growth of developing countries like Africa. The black line is the GDP growth of countries like the United States, developed. It's almost twice the rate of developed countries. They are growing so much faster because of the rising middle class. We know this, you guys have heard this a million times, the number of mouths to feed. But that is a hard trend. And so when we look around and we think about the future, that's why Amazon buys Whole Foods. We know as a hard trend that there will always be more mouths to feed. So keep that in mind when you think about what these companies are doing. Hard trend, farms are growing and shrinking. The middle level farm is being plateaued out. So as you can see on the left side, that is the amount of land that is in farms less than 10,000 gross farm income. And then you can see on the right, farms with more than $1 million gross farm income, small amount of land. So they're getting bigger, and the smaller ones, there's more of them. So just a hard trend to consider when we think about where farms will be placed in the future, who will be farming in the future. This has a lot to do with it. Hard trend, increased technology. My friend Willie is going to be talking about some of the trends that he's seeing coming to your farm in the future. And so really listen up, because this is not going to go backwards. It's only going to go forwards. That's a drone that's coming to look at that weed. And so this is becoming more and more rampant on the farms that are just around me in Scott County, Iowa. And that's a hard trend that we need to just be aware of, embrace, and then we'll talk here in a minute about what that means for you as a producer. Hard trend, more women in ag. You heard me talk about it a minute ago, but today women own 30% of farmland. That wasn't the case. They were selling, they were passing it on. No, today more women are taking over the farm. And why is that? Because of the aging farmer and because of the increase in technology. So I love to tell the story of Mary Kraft. Mary Kraft is a dairy producer in Fort Collins, Colorado, and she runs a 5,000 head dairy by herself with her employees. Mary has an MBA. She grew up on the farm, but she doesn't really know much about milking a cow. But she has a robotic dairy, and she has cows that come in with the Bluetooth collars on them. So what she's really good at is looking at the data every day and making sure that everything's running on track. So technology is allowing more women to come back and run operations, where in the past it was based on how much muscle you had, and if you really enjoyed milking cows, and if you enjoyed being dirty and in the barn. Those things don't matter as much anymore. Hard trend, the millennial consumer. Isn't this our favorite topic, us that are not millennials, is to make fun of the millennials? I'm just kidding. But this is so, so important. And it's something that we're seeing impact our clients today. And I have some examples of that. But just a few things, and I don't know if you can see this, but they want to know where their food's coming from, which is so funny to me because they don't want to know how their car works. They don't even know how to change the oil, but they want to know how their food's grown, and so the things that they're choosing to learn about are really fascinating, but that's super important. It's not about nutrition. They see dining and eating as an experience. It's a self-expression. I'm a vegan. I'm a pescatarian. It's who I am. I eat this way because I believe this. And so it's really a sea change from how many of us grew up. The splurging. It's an amazing amount of money my millennial colleagues will spend on lunch. I'm like, I'm not paying for that for lunch. It's a lunch. So they are really into spending money on a dining experience. And this goes hand in hand with some of the real estate issues that are happening that you guys have probably heard about. But millennials are not interested in owning a home. There's more and more of them that want to rent because they'd rather have their money freed up for experiences. Dining, vacation. My millennial colleagues, for a weekend, for an experience, they want to go zip lining. When I was their age, I was just happy to go to Galena and drive around. It was a different experience. And so they just spend their money differently. Prefer whole foods over processed foods. I think all of us can see that coming. And then, they really take it as this sort of ethical, moral, personal thing on where their food is grown and how it's grown. And then the 30%, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see, of the foods, the organic, which I think is fascinating because we really haven't very well defined in the United States what organic means today. And so they've already adopted that they want it, even though we don't know exactly what it is. And so I also brought a list of some terms that I hadn't thought about that have just come up in the last 10 years. So tell me if you would have heard these same terms 10 years ago. Food miles. You guys heard that one? So I was with a colleague of mine, and she's like, I wonder how many food miles this chicken breast has traveled. I'm like, what are you talking about? And what that means is how far from where it was produced to her plate, the miles of that. Food deserts. So is this restaurant in a food desert? I'm like, well, we're in Atlanta, there's an ocean right there. I don't know what you mean by that. And what they mean is there anything around it that is producing? And so it's actually a desert, and they had to bring it in. Foodies, we've all heard of that. Farm to table, that's one we've heard of. And urban agriculture. So those are becoming prominent. And I have to tell you, the foodies thing is real. I was in Las Vegas last week on the way back from a family vacation. We were at the Grand Canyon, and we spent our last day in Vegas. And I was walking around with my children, and there was this huge line, and the line was outside of the restaurant for Cake Boss. Now, that's a show that's on the Food Network, and it's this guy that makes these amazing cakes, right? But these cakes are like 10 feet tall and full of sugar and all the things millennials say they don't want. And yet there was a line in 110-degree weather all the way out just to buy a cupcake from the Cake Boss because these people are foodies and they have this fan and fanaticism for a personality. So it's very real. It's something just that we need to be aware of. Okay, so back on that millennial thing. We do a lot of focus groups within our firm. We like to bring our producers in and ask how it's going, what could we be doing better, what's on their minds. And we were talking about millennials, and I wanted to point out a couple of these, but the first one's really interesting to me. This is from a client of ours who grows carrots in the Ohio region. And what he did, though, for years was grow carrots for processing, so canned carrots. Well, his entire business is turning upside down because millennials don't want to eat a carrot out of a can. So that has forced the processing plants to close, and that is reshaping his business. So it's really real impact. So when we talk about these things, it's not just funny. I mean, it's very impactful. The last one, I'm making important decisions based on consumer buying trends, but I need younger eyes. This came from a 58-year-old farmer who says, I don't eat like a millennial. I don't know what to look for. And so they're really looking to different consultants for advice on how this is going to impact them. Okay, so those are some hard trends. And I think if we open it up, we could probably think of 10 more real quickly, hard trends that are affecting agriculture, but I think you get the idea of what we're looking at here. So now we take those trends and we began to anticipate how that will impact your business, all right? So the hard trend of needing more food and technology really is going to head toward this, which is the hydroponic and the vertical farming. So are you guys familiar with this? This is where we're growing produce inside of buildings, vertical structures and inner cities with grow lights and in hydroponic solutions. Well, you know, before I always thought this is something that's happening more in urban. We have a farm client, a great big grain producer in Iowa, who is also doing this on his farm. I think that's fascinating. He brought his son back to the farming operation. They knew they needed to diversify. His son was bringing some of these hard trends. And so they've hooked up with a company out of Boston. It's called Freight Farm. And what this company does is buy shipping containers, freights, and then implement these growing systems inside of all these freights. So aside from their 4,000 acres of corn and soybeans and wheat, they have about 20 acres set aside that just has freights on it, where they're growing produce. Interesting. Sustainability, you know, I talked about this earlier, but this is something that we're anticipating now based on these hard trends. We know, because we are seeing it and we're hearing it, and we have clients coming to us, that their buyers are wanting to know their sustainability metrics. And sustainability is a terrible word. It's an awful word. Who knows what it means, right? But there are some key metrics that the industry, particularly the food industry, can agree on, and those are the things that we really work toward. You know, it has to do with treatment of animals. It has to do with carbon management. It has to do with water usage and energy. And so there's definitely some metrics that you guys are probably already doing on your farms. You just need to kind of credit yourself for it so that you're ready. So here's an example that I pulled. Some of you may work with Smithfield Foods, but they came to us recently and asked us to work with them with some of our clients. So they have a goal of 25% reduction in greenhouse gas based on what kind of the industry is pushing them to do and what consumers are pushing them to do. So to meet this goal, these are the things they've done. They've hired a full-time agronomist to work with the farmers in their North Carolina region to make sure that they are on their farms putting in place some of the sustainability measures that are needed. They've purchased new technologies, so they're making capital investments in sensor technology. They are asking producers to plant cover crops. They are beginning to partner with other food companies like Land O'Lakes to build coalitions of farmers who are willing to be sustainable. It's called the Midwest Row Crop Coalition. Are any of you involved in it? It just came about, and so these farmers have said, yes, we agree to do all of these sustainability things in exchange for being your preferred customer or provider when you need a certain product. And then today, they're exploring different types of manure lagoons for some of their supplier operations. So this is real. This is happening. This is what they're doing right now. Okay, this is a robot that is picking a strawberry. This is also happening on one of my clients' farms. So like I said, we have clients now in California, which has been, I was telling some of the folks here at this table, that's been such a unique experience because we think we have problems. California, they have such a different array of problems. They have not only environmental issues, they have drought, they have immigration issues. You know, think about it. California is the #1 producer of fresh produce, but they have a minimum wage that's over $15 an hour. They've lost 60% of their labor force due to competition from Mexico and other places. And now they have Trump with his immigration plans and a wall being built. So the farmers there are just really struggling on anticipating what's going to happen in the future. And honestly, this is what they're going to head toward. So they're probably, they were telling me, about 6 months away from this being out in the fields. What they're waiting on is the computer to be able to better see vision-wise exactly what it's picking. So the mechanics of it, the not bruising, all the other things in terms of quality are there. It's the actual just making sure that they're every time seeing the right thing. So this is very real. It's happening. Okay, so this is kind of a rendering of what a future farm may look like based on the concept of the Internet of Things. You guys heard this term, the Internet of Things? So it basically means anything that can be connected to another thing will be. You will be able to lay in bed, turn on your computer, tell your computer to turn your microwave on and start your mac and cheese. You know, that kind of a concept, right? So think about that on your farm. And this is very real as well. And the goal with people who are supporting the Internet of Things is that your whole farming operation can be run from one central command station, and that everything is talking to everything else and telling it what it needs. So the actual crop in the field will have a sensor in it that's going to alert the drone that I need a certain fertile, a nutrient put on me tomorrow, based on what the weather station said it was going to do, because it's going to rain in 2 days. So they're all talking to each other, and they're all thinking. And our friends just down the road here, John Deere, want that central place to be inside your tractor. They're actively spending lots of money to make sure that your tractor is the central nervous system. I would want it to be the farmer, but just keep that in mind, that they're also looking to what everybody can capitalize on. And I'm sure Willie will talk a little bit more about that as well. Okay, and lastly, this seems a little bit out there, but not so much. I was in a meeting with some of our partners, and we were doing some of this anticipatory work, and it had just come out that Amazon had bought Whole Foods. And so we were talking about that, and, well, that's great and all, but it's more of a logistics play, and we were trying to figure out some of the business reasons behind it. And one of my partners who lives in California, he said, well, what happens when Amazon becomes the farmer? We're like, what? And he said, what happens when Amazon buys 500,000 acres of desert in Nevada and puts up a biosphere and produces all the food it needs to supply Whole Foods? What happens then? Who needs the farmer then? And, it could happen based on hard trends. If you look, there's a desert in Spain. It's called the Tapanani Desert. And in the 80s, no, it was the 60s. In the 60s, they put up greenhouses all over that desert, little greenhouses, to start growing food because it's the driest place on Earth. And actually, you can go to Google Maps and Google Satellite and see these little greenhouses. Well, today they're sustainable. That was in the 60s when they were putting up greenhouses. So some of this really isn't that sci-fi. It's just thinking differently. One more area of thinking differently and anticipatory and based on hard trends. The future of who will be farming will be different. So this is an actual ad from the FFA that many of us were members of as production agriculture kids. And this is an ad for their FFA in urban Chicago. So these kids are growing produce right there in their backyards in urban Chicago. And they're doing the CSA, the Community Supported Ag, where people are buying in. And so we need to just be aware that the future farmer could look completely different than any of us sitting in this room, and what that means to community and cultures, and how do we integrate all of that into the future of agriculture. So now what? Can you guys see that? What if we don't change at all and something magical happens? Does that sound good? Well, it's not. That's probably not the best case scenario. So what we try to do is really prepare our farm clients. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do and some of the traits of the clients that we know will be farming in the future. And one of the things that we realize is that when we have these focus groups with our clients, and I'm sure some of my peers can agree with this, they're really looking to us as a partner, a business partner who's kind of got their back. There's so much coming at you guys that you need as many people around you watching your blind sides as possible. And so that's something that we recognize and we're really trying to do, which is why we're doing a lot of this AO work. Transparency is also the thing that they've been asking for. And I think it has a lot to do with the folks that are going to be on this panel. The days of a seed salesman coming to your door and handing you a price and saying, this is what you're going to plant and this is what you're going to pay, are over, and you guys know this. There's so much transparency out there because of data, and the ability now to know more about what a product does and what it really is worth puts a lot of power back into the producer's hand, and so that's important. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the traits of some of our high-performing clients, but I want you guys to recognize, and I want to be transparent about this, our best clients, we realize, are that top 12%. They're the ones that are producing the most, the 84% of the value of production out there today. So we're looking for that top level of producer to be our client. But that requires higher analysis, that requires more sophisticated farm business systems like FBS, like what we're hearing from today. And in the end, they're looking for ways to create value all around the operation. So this is a picture of Greg Halverson. Do any of you know Greg? Some of you do, yeah. So Greg is a potato farmer in North Dakota. He is the largest chip potato grower for Frito-Lay. And what I want to share with you is the way he thinks, and this is the type of producer that we think will be farming in the future because of this. So Greg farms in 11 states. He has 11 different farming operations that range from Maryland to Michigan. Different climate types, different labor levels, different cultures. And so he was really struggling with, how do I create the same quality chip potato in all these different varying situations? So he was looking for some SOPs, some standard operating procedures that he could put in place. And he thought, and he kind of looked within the industry, and he was going through the drive-thru one day at a McDonald's, and he realized, you know what? Every time I eat at McDonald's, that burger tastes the same. Whether I'm in Tropic, Utah, or Walcott, Iowa, it tastes the same. How are they doing that? So Greg Halverson made an appointment with McDonald's, and somehow he got in with their logistics supervisors, and he talked them into giving him 111 of their SOPs, and he implemented those SOPs in his farming operation. That is the kind of thinking that we're looking for. That is the kind of thinking of a farmer who's going to survive in the future. So just keep that in mind. Okay, trait number one of our best clients. They are not afraid to leave their comfort zone. And that's actually a picture of one of our clients. That's a little bit too outside the comfort zone. We tell them that. But it's funny to me, and maybe you guys who work with producers, have you ever realized if they're not risky in their business, they're completely risky with their mortal souls and selves. Like they have motorcycles and they jet ski and they jump off buildings. And so it's really funny to me how they put some of that risk aversion in different areas. But we encourage all of our clients to leave your comfort zone. And that can be in so many different areas. That could be trying on a new technology. It could be developing a new business entity and working through some scenario planning there. It could be as simple as running for a local office. So we have a lot of producers who are sort of out-managed themselves. And what we mean by that is they are so in their business all the time that they are driving every employee there crazy. And so we encourage them to take those skills and use them for the good in other places. Run for office, serve on a board, do some other things. Oh, I could never do that. And so we call those stretch goals, and we really try to help our clients think about ways that they can get outside their comfort zone. It is amazing the growth that happens, not only for that human being, but for their business as well. Number two, not afraid of technology. Obviously, you guys are getting the point here, but the clients we want are the ones that are okay with saying, yes, I may not understand technology, but I know I need it, and I know I need to embrace it. So I don't care if they don't embrace the technology, they need to at least hire someone who does. And so we have a lot of our clients now who are hiring CTOs, which are Chief Technology Officers. That means they're actually hiring a position to come into their farm to manage all of the data that's coming off of their souped-up John Deere and off of their drone and off of all the things that are, being spit at them. If you can't afford to do that, share a CTO with a farmer friend of yours. That's becoming really popular as well. And a great place to find a CTO is your community colleges. Find a kid that's coming out with a computer science degree, with some kind of an engineering degree. They make great CTOs, especially if they're an ag kid at heart and they just really want to be on the farm. Utilize that. Look at this first comment, though. We have more knowledge and tools at our disposal today than in the entire 70 years of farming of your grandparents. I mean, like, that's just unbelievable if you really think about it. So, embrace the technology. Relationship with key partners. You guys have heard this, it's being drilled into your head, but it has never been more important. And when we say key partners, we're talking about 3 really important ones. Your accountant. That's kidding. That's like lower down. But actually your banker. Banker. You've got to have a strong relationship with your banker now because of what is happening right now with economics. And your landlords. This doesn't mean the annual visit with the ham. We are really encouraging 2 to 3 to 4 times a year having these meetings. Transparency, as much open book as you can stomach. They need to know where you are, you need to know where they are. There needs to be discussions. And so I talked with one of our specialists, his name is Peter Martin. And you guys may have heard him speak. He was a former banker, and now he works with our firm and helps clients find unique ways for capital and different things along financing. And I said, beyond sharing your financials with your banker, what else should a producer be doing today to build that relationship? And these are the things that he said. You need to go in and share right away how you have a competitive advantage over your neighbor down the road. You have to sort of begin to prove why you're the best at what you do. Talents. Talk about the talents in your team. Talk about that new CTO that you just hired from community college and how he's taking all that data and actually making it usable. So those are really important things to share with your banker. It shows that you have a depth of bench behind you. Lay out your risks. That makes sense. That's pretty self-explanatory. Structure. Absolutely, you have to know the structure of your business, your enterprises, your entity work. I know that FBS talks a lot about this as well. And also being okay with getting rid of some of the enterprises that aren't making you money. So this has been a really hard thing for a lot of our clients because all of us have those pet enterprises that we really love. Like the 50 head of Santa Gertrudis cattle that really, are not selling well in the market. But gosh, we love that breed and they're so pretty. They really are. So taking those hard looks at those enterprises that are not making you money and that are draining from your operation. And then future plans, which goes into estate planning and succession planning, which I'll mention here in a minute. Trait number 4 is the consistent business planning. We don't want to work with you if you're just going to sit down 2 times a year and make out your marketing plan and then wing it from there. That's not the kind of client that's going to make it in the future. You need consistent, weekly, monthly, lots and lots of discussions because it's changing so fast. And we have a lot of excuses. All of us have excuses. So look at this list. Can you see it? How many of these resonate with you? One of my favorite ones is number 7. We don't have consistent planning because meetings are a waste of time, Jeannie. We don't have time. Oh, really? Okay, so who sets the meetings? Well, I do. Okay, do you set them every week? No, I just try to get everybody together when I can. Okay, do you have an agenda? No. Well, and it doesn't matter anyway, because when I come in, they are on their cell phones. Well, do you tell them, don't be on your cell phones, no cell phones allowed in this 15 minutes? No. Okay, so those are 3 things right there that if he fixed, would make his meetings better. People might actually want to attend the meetings and they wouldn't be a waste of time. So I really talk a lot with clients about making sure your meetings are worthy of having a meeting. And just little things make such a difference. If you can guarantee we will be out of here in 10 minutes if I have absolutely all of your attention right now, I guarantee you your employees will pay attention because they want to be out of there in 10 minutes. So anyway, lots of excuses that we can all resonate, including myself, but working on those and making business management just a continual thing. Succession and estate planning, this is a non-negotiable for us. All of our clients must have started or be in the process of estate and succession planning. And the 2 are different. Estate planning is dealing with a lot of these things, tax exposure, asset protection, etc. Succession planning is taking the time to really think about your transition of what you want for the future of your farming operation or your business, what that looks like, who that looks like, frankly, and then what it means for you. What are you going to do when you retire? So it's more of really taking the time to think about what your wants and your needs are and your vision. They're very different. Those are non-negotiables for us, for our clients. And some of our clients don't like to hear that, but we just sort of keep telling them that that's a non-negotiable. So it's very hard. I'm not trying to make light of it. It is difficult, but just starting the process is the biggest step. So, trait number 5. Our best producers think like a CEO. They are professionalizing their businesses. So on your tables, I gave you a handout. You don't have to look through it now, but I would encourage you to take it home. And you can look at different key areas. So these on the left are the key areas that we hone in on with our clients. And it's really interesting to take that key area, look at how you would approach it when you first started farming or as an entrepreneur. Look at it now in the middle if you were going to professionalize that. So an example would be planning. Just like I said, entrepreneurs, when they're doing planning, it's informal, it's ad hoc, it's when I have time, it's not very thought out. Professional, CEO-run businesses, there is strategy, there's operational planning. They look at the structure, they set time for it. So you can go through each of those key areas with your team when you go back home. And just take like 10 minutes at one of your staff meetings and just sort of walk through that. Hey guys, how are we doing on this? It'd be interesting to see what they say, which things you're doing that are still entrepreneurial and which ones are more professional. Okay, the other way that you can become more like a CEO is with some of your time management tips. So I'm going to give you 2, and I don't know if you can see them, hopefully you can. The first one is to stay within, it's called a maximum acceptable bounds of time management. So there are some guidelines. As a manager, you should, and I think, Norm, you're going to put this up on the website. Yeah, so you should have no more than 300 10-hour days a year in your business. No more than that. The rest of the time, 50 10-hour days need to be on the things outside of business. Family, school, church, hobbies, etc. So this fall, when you're in the combine and you're really bored because it's driving itself, you take some time to figure out how much you're spending on your business. If you're over those hours, it has been scientifically proven, Harvard Business Review level, that means you're on your way to burnout. So just use that as a boundary for yourself. Follow the 80-20 rule. You guys have all heard this, right? So 80% of the results come from 20% of what you do. Really looking, and that goes back to the sheets on your table. What can you tweak just a little bit? 20% here, 20% there, make 20% better. That can give you an 80% return. Those are the things that CEOs do. Delegate it. Remember, I told you, when I laid these on your table, I said, I have homework and you can even delegate it. So if you don't have time, delegate it. You don't have to do everything yourself. CEOs don't. They don't do everything themselves. You shouldn't be either. Okay, trait 6, develop others. And I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but I can kid you not. Our best clients, our most successful clients, it has to be karma. They are constantly paying it forward. They always bring in a manager, someone that's that they're grooming in the business, always to our client meetings. And we encourage that. So take those people with you to the co-op. Take them when you go to negotiate at the bank. Be in the mode of developing others and listening to what their career goals are as well. So, now that you've heard the future, and you've heard how to predict it with hard trends and anticipatory, and you've heard what we do in working with our clients, and what some of the traits are of our best clients, I want to know where all of you stand. Then, whether you're a producer or just working in your business, you can take this poll. So we're going to try, again, the polling system. Hopefully this one will work on your phone. So you are in the to line of your phone. You're going to put the number 22333. And in the subject line, you're going to put Jeanne Bernick 985. And once you do that, you can go ahead and put your answer to the very first question, and it should start populating. So I put A in there, which is not right. I'm older than that. But just to test it out. So let me know if it's not working. We can go the old-fashioned way. Oh, yay! So, this is interesting because it's going against my hard trend, right, of aging farmers. So this is a young group, which is great, which also means that maybe some of you have been sent by your older people on your farm who are saying, look, we have a hard trend and you need to go and learn. But just real quick, that gives us a sense of the room. Okay, so majority between, we have no 41 to 50-year-olds in here? Come on, people. Pass it up. Dana, I know you are. I am too. Is it working on the phone, Dana?
Getting there.
Okay, good. Is it not working? Yeah. So for those of you that's not working, what's it saying? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you may still be hooked on norms.
Yeah. So
you have to say leave. I apologize, I didn't know that. Okay. You have to say leave and then put in Jeanne Bernick 985. And I apologize. I didn't know that it didn't automatically cut you off. Is it working? No?
Why aren't questions coming? I don't understand. What's different?
You won't have the question on your phone, so you send it into the...
So on this one, I tried to make it easier for you. You would just answer, you just either put in A, B, C, D, E, or F. You're welcome. And I didn't explain that well, so. We'll give it another minute here. Is it working yet, Nicole? Okay, so go ahead and answer the first question. So put in A, B, C, D, and let's see what happens. Yeah.
How do I get a norm?
Just type in the word leave.
I gotta go back to the.
So did you put in a letter? Did anybody see it with your eyes? Okay, so we're going to move on as we go along. But you guys are getting the sense of what we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's try this one. Which technology do you use on your farming operation? And you can put A, comma, B if you use A and B. You can put more than one. When I say robots, it could be robotic dairy, it could be a strawberry picker, it could be any type of robot that is replacing a labor-intensive job.
We can need more than one, you said.
You can choose more than one. So you would put A, it won't let you? Darn it, say it good.
What, comma?
Yes, you should be able to do A, comma, B.
No space.
No space. Did it work? Yours worked? What did you do? And it worked? So try letter, comma, letter. What does it say if it does? Does it just come back to you and say, won't accept, or?
Just like a box, where you can select those questions.
It worked? Okay, she says it worked. Maybe try again. Oh, you guys aren't doing text. You're doing it on the, okay, this one's, I'm sorry, this one is set up for text. Again, I should have said. That's okay. We don't, this is not to stress you out. We have much more things to be stressed about, like, Amazon buying Whole Foods, so.
CTO?
Yeah, we need a CTO. This is why you need a CTO. Yes, sir.
I don't think it takes three.
It won't.
It says process 1 and 3 go.
Okay, I think you guys are on the website first. Oh, you're not? Okay. Well, tell you what, let's just talk about this. So I am glad to see that you are using accounting software. That makes Norm happy. There you go, Norm. Anybody who's using robots, would you mind just telling me what you're using?
I was just checking to
Oh, John, you're out. Okay, weather stations. Good. All right. Yeah, I figured there's more weather stations than that. Soil sensors. Okay. All right. Yeah, I figured there'd be a little bit higher. Well, anyway, you get this sense. We're starting to adapt it, but the drone one is really interesting to me. 2 years ago, I would not have seen a drone in Scott County, and now I see them all the time. So I don't know if it's a fun thing, if it's like Christmas gifts, or what's going on, but I see them a lot. Okay, let's try this one and see if it works. Do you leave your comfort zone as a business leader? Be honest with yourself. I'm really curious how we are doing as a group on this one. It is subjective, yeah. Okay, good. So there's some honest people in the room. That's good. So I challenge you on this. If you're in that no level, think about what makes you uncomfortable. And challenge yourself to do one thing this year that would make you uncomfortable. It's amazing how it grows you. If any of you have children, this is what they do all the time. This is what they do every day at school. This is what they do with friends. That's how they grow, right? And suddenly as adults, we just stop doing that because it's not fun. But wow, it makes such a difference. Okay, do you project your costs annually? And this sounds like a no-brainer. In my 20 years at Farm Journal and 5 years as editor of Top Producer, I was shocked how many top producers don't know their cost of production. Or everyone would say, what's your...
There's no reason for it. It changes a lot. I don't know how to get that.
Exactly.
Fuel just went up. What do I do?
Yeah. One year at a Top Producer event in Chicago, if any of you have been to it, I had 2 of my writers go around, and I said, I want you to ask every farmer you know what their break-even cost is this year. Every single one of them said it was $375. Like, you can't all have the same break-even costs. You're from different parts of the country. So it's like funny to me that this is something that is not necessarily, something we think about, but obviously you guys do. Okay, consistent marketing plan. I would expect this to be pretty high A's. And when I say consistent, yeah, it doesn't mean that you don't go in and tweak it, but you're consistently planning, you're consistently looking at it. Or you set it once a year and don't look at it. Period. Okay, that would make sense. Most of you are doing that well. How many of you have livestock in this room? Okay, so about half and half. So that would make sense as well. Do you meet with your banker and landlords more than 2 times a year? And this is because you want to, not because you got called in. This is a positive meeting, I mean. Okay, interesting. Go ahead.
Spin this that way. How many people have farms or bankers come out to their farm?
Ooh, how many people have, let's just do, well, we can't, I don't know if we want to do that, but
I just
yeah, interesting.
I find it interesting that, there's a lot of banks that have the old mentality. They sit in their office and wait for the guys to come in. A lot going out to the farm that seems to be a lost art.
Yeah. When's the last time you had a banker come out?
Well, I'm sort of on the bank side, and I think it's a pet peeve I have of them not being a partner in the farming operation. They sit in the office and they look at the numbers and the books, but they're not out walking on the farm.
Do you think that's a function of new loan officers who are young and didn't come from farming? Because we're seeing that a lot as well. Who don't have an ag background, they don't even know if they went to a farm where, the front store is.
I think that's part of it, but I also think it's part of the regulations.
Sure.
And lenders, lender liability is that they're not willing to help, make a good decision.
Right. So that means that the producer themselves has to be even more proactive. Unfortunately and unjustly, but truthfully. John, was there anything that you were commenting on that was valuable? I can give him a hard time. That's what happens when you talk outside the box. All right, good. Do you have an estate plan started? I say started because they're never truly finished anymore. You know, we did a lot of analysis when Trump was running against what Trump's tax would impact for farmers in the state versus what Clinton. And luckily it was positive compared to what was going to happen under Clinton. But there is a lot of uncertainty in what Trump is going to do regarding tax and how that will impact a lot of end of year decisions. And so having that estate plan in place, even if you have to tweak it, it's going to give you so much more peace to get started because you have something and you're aware. So if nothing else, that's one reason. Succession plan. Remember, I told you they're different. So this is actively thinking about the future of your business, who could take over, whether you even want to continue producing. You know, we actually have a lot of those discussions these days. Maybe it's time to get into another business if this is not bringing you the satisfaction, the joy, the family. You know, that is a really hard conversation for farmers to have, to think about not farming. But it's something that's real. Okay, great. Do you spend time improving your business culture? So that talks to that end comment I said about developing others, thinking about what you want in terms of being a proactive and anticipatory business. So I would encourage you to buy the book that I said, Flash Foresight, bring it to your next business meeting on your farm, and just pick some things to have some discussions out of. It's a great way to start to build a culture that thinks forward. Great. Are you practicing any of the CEO time management skills that I said? The watching your boundaries, the 80-20 rule, just thinking more professional, some of the things that are on this table? That's better numbers than I thought. Or like 2 people doing this, it's probably just 2 people in the room, right? All right. You get the sense of what I'm going for here. Just really taking some time to reflect and think about the things we talked about. One more. This is the last one, developing others in your operation. Great. You guys are all superstars, right? 100%. Oh, there's some real guys. Okay, well, what I want to leave you with is this quote, because it has so much to do with the last things we talked about, and it's something that I think is really valuable in business and in agriculture, and it will take you through what you're going to do the next 2 days. But keep in mind, you can have everything that you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. Isn't that true? Whether it's a spouse, kids, neighbors, a partner, your banker even, you help them, they help you. So keep that in mind. Thank you for your time today. These are the places that you can reach me. Email, I'm on Twitter. I have some blogs. Our firm, like I told you, is expansive and has lots of experts in it, and we're able to help in many ways if you need anything. And other than that, I'm going to be around if you need something, but thank you for your time. Thank you, Norm.